Welcome to the show. This is Jason Hartman, your host, and every 10th episode, we do something kind of special, kind of different. What we do is we go off topic. So regardless of which show it is on the Hartman Media Network, whether it be one of the financial shows, economics, real estate investing, travel, longevity, all of the other topics that we have, every 10th episode, we go off topic and we explore something of general interest, something of general life success value. And so many of our listeners around the world in 164 countries have absolutely loved our 10th episode shows. So that's what we're going to do today. And let's go ahead and get to our guest with a special 10th episode show. And of course, on the next episode, we'll be back to our regular programming. Here we go.
This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the AIPIS show for accredited income property investment specialists and those who aspire to be. If you're a real estate, mortgage, or financial professional, this is the place for you. We'll explore innovative investment analysis, sales, marketing, and income-generating strategies for the most historically proven wealth creator, income property. Learn from the experts as they show you how to build a better business and a better life.
It is my pleasure to welcome Stephen Kuhn to the show. I was introduced to him by a great mutual friend of ours. He is the author of Unleash Your Humble Alpha, Own Your Presence in Life, and Become the Epic Leader You Are Meant to Be. Stephen, welcome. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much, Jason. I appreciate it. I'm doing great.
And just for geography, you are located in Turkey, right?
Indeed, right on the Mediterranean, actually. I'm looking at it right now.
Fantastic. Well, I am in Bogota, Colombia, so we are a world apart almost. You know, I listened on audio to about a third of this book so far, and it's really fascinating. Give us kind of the elevator pitch, if you will, and then we'll dive deeper.
Sure. So Unleash Your Humble Alpha is all about creating an operating system for your life. It's based on 5 core models in which I live and that anyone can live. Each chapter has a few stories, lessons from that story, and then the exact action steps you need in order to put an operating system in your life so that when, just like a laptop, it's always the same operating system. You might have, viruses or uploads or downloads or whatever, but the operating system stays the same. And a lot of times we don't know our identity and who we are and what we're all about. When you know that, the rest of the world falls into place.
As you were saying that, Stephen, you reminded me of some of the learnings and research I did many, many years ago, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too, really distinguishing the difference between context and content. And
Right.
So many people and so many programs and so many gurus out there teach people how to change the content of their life, whereas they don't really look at the context, which will either support certain content or kill certain content. Would you say that's what the operating system is like?
Yeah, I would say that because it doesn't change, right? Obviously, it can shift and it can be added to a virus, antivirus, or whatever you want to call it. But in the end, once you know your true identity, it can shift over time. But once you know your true identity, that amplifies your purpose and amplifies your identity through your purpose. So whatever purpose you have at any time in your life, it's still amplifying that same identity, and that is, of course, the cause of everything. If you ask anybody, who they are, they'll say, well, I'm a CEO. No, that's what you do. Well, who are you? Well, I'm a father. No, that's what you do. If you ask somebody who they are, 99% of the world can't even tell you.
Well, that's a very good point. And, who am I? Like when people try to answer that question, the first answer they'll give is their name. The second answer they'll give is some of those roles you mentioned. Well, I'm the CEO of such and such, or I'm the husband of so and so, or I'm the father or mother of so and so. Right? That's not who they are. Right?
No.
So, what is the answer to that question?
Well, the answer to that question is you got to do the work. And some people who've read this book, and there's been quite a few. We had, for instance, a colonel from the United States Army that got out after 30 years. It took him 3 months to find his identity going through the workbook. Other people find it in a few hours. And so basically what it is, through going through the workbook, we ask you questions that you ask yourself, and then you ask friends around you and people around you, and then you come up with almost like an identity statement of what you're about, who you are. And then we boil it down to a 2-word moniker. And that 2-word moniker gives you who you are at this time in your life. For instance, me, I'm the powerful connector. Doesn't sound very amazing, but when you think about it, when I bring people together, I inject power into the relationship, and I'm the conduit between the two, ensuring that both parties are getting and receiving what each other said they were going to get, and I ensure that everybody's going to win. And when I realized that, I got to tell you, my life changed completely. When I said, you know what, if I look at my life, I've always been connecting people, and I've always been putting power into it, but I never really made it into like a business. Well, at that point, I made it into a business, and now I make millions of dollars just connecting people, making deals, doing deals, connecting through not only two people, but then ancillary services and people, and whatever it is. I'm known as the guy to go to connect people. That only came to me once I crystallized it in my own mind when I did all the work myself.
Okay, so powerful connector is your 2-word moniker. Can you give us some examples of some of the people you coach or have mentored over you?
Sure. Well, I've worked with people like, and I don't want to say I've coached them, but I've worked in their businesses. I'm going to do some name dropping here. I've worked in their businesses and helped them, let's say, optimize. And one was Andrea Bocelli, the famous tenor.
What is his business, if you will?
His business?
You don't think of singing as a business, right?
Well, no, his business, he has a bunch of artists on his label.
Oh, okay.
So he's got a bunch of artists on his label, and they have the Andrea Bocelli Foundation, which helps children in Haiti. There's a bunch of ancillary businesses that he has in there.
Right.
So
Okay.
Olivia Newton-John, she had a business that I helped over 3 years. She had a natural herbal business. They used to ship sustainably harvest herbs from the Amazon in the United States, unprocessed, unfumigated, direct from the Shipibo Indians. And through this company, we would go out and sell the products all over the world. I launched her company in 6 countries in Europe, and every 10% of everything we generated, we gave back to the Shipibo Indians, and they then, through that, were able to purchase the deed for their land in the Amazon. So they actually own the land that they live on now, as opposed to typical indigenous, is they're allowed to live there until, of course, the government needs the wood. Right. So now they actually have it. So those are some of the big ones. Other ones are, I'm working with a group from South Carolina. They own 4 companies, which we just funded for $94.5 million, and we're helping them expand internationally. Now, a lot of that has to do with, I'm American. I don't know how to do international. That's sort of what they think. And in order for them to expand their whatever they're doing in the States, they have to understand what it means to, communicate in the rest of the world. And sometimes, as it doesn't matter if you're American trying to communicate to Europe or the other way around, it's just different, the cultures. So how do you do that without changing who you are? And how do you do that still being solid in who you are? And it all comes down to one thing, and that's certainty. Certainty in my abilities to deploy my genius or my talents in any given situation. Certainty allows me to let go of the how I'm going to do anything. Because if I'm certain, I know what's going to happen. So, for instance, if I'm sitting here right now, a hurricane comes, or the SWAT team breaks into the room, I know I can deal with it. Like, I have zero doubt that I can deal with that. That certainty is what people buy into. That certainty is what people follow.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true. Pardon the pun.
Pun, yeah.
Certainly true. Certainty is a big part of it because people they look for places in their life where there will be certainty in a very uncertain world. So there's no question that is an attractive quality, no matter what. But let's back up a little bit. Let's start with Olivia Newton-John. She was my crush for many, many years. I love Olivia Newton-John, and it's sad to see her go a few years ago. But what was her moniker, for example?
We never got to the moniker. She's a very, very tough woman and a very straightforward woman. She was someone who was a perfectionist in delivery. And that doesn't matter if it was her product or her voice or even a stage where we were presenting the product. It had to be lit the way she wanted it, the way she took pictures, the way people angled cameras. She was an absolute perfectionist, so that the people watching, the people who were looking at her can enjoy the entire full spectrum of what she was doing. So never sat down and did her 2-word moniker, but we got to the point where we knew that was one of her strengths, and we used that to our advantage when we did the tour all around Europe. And I brought her and introduced her to ambassadors. And when you're walking around with Olivia Newton-John, you can basically get in front of anybody. And so that's what we did. We got in front of anybody and everybody.
Bocelli, for example, did you, work with them on their operating systems or discover their operating systems as you were working with them?
I worked with their artists on their operating systems.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Artists on operating systems.
Okay, cool. So why did you call it the humble alpha? Because most people think of the alpha dog, right? The leader. Yeah. There's a lot of coaching in the men's world about being an alpha man, right? That is definitely not humble, right?
No,
There's nothing humble about being the alpha usually.
No,
but what do you mean by it?
It means alpha on the inside, humble on the outside. If someone's an alpha, they're not out there yelling it. They're not out there saying it. They're not out there projecting it, pounding their chest, screaming and yelling, sleeve tattoos, long beards, and big hats. It's not. That's not what it's about. A true alpha doesn't have to turn around to see if people are following them. They just do, and people follow. A true alpha fills a room when they walk in without saying a word. That's where that certainty in oneself comes from. And so the humble part is on the outside. That's it. So you know what I'm talking about. You're in a room, all of a sudden everyone turns and looks. Who just walked in? Why did they turn and look when someone walked in and didn't say a word? Well, it's because he fills the room or she fills the room.
Right. But how do you do that? I mean, everybody wants respect and attention and, impact, right? That's a typical kind of human desire. How does one do that? Just by...
Well, it depends on your realm, because unfortunately, the world wants right now, they want that sales pitch of the alpha male. So there's people that are taking advantage of that and playing that game. I mean, there's guys out there acting like military veterans, wearing little short shorts and talking tough. Never been in the military, but they're using it to their advantage, right? That's just the way it is. But why, you got to ask yourself, and this is where the HIT principles come in that are in the book. HIT stands for honesty, integrity, and transparency. Honesty with yourself, why you do, say, and think like you do. It's transparency. It's how you step into the world with that honesty, and it's your ongoing reputation. The byproduct is integrity. Integrity makes you authentic. Authenticity allows you to dictate your market value. Why does someone feel the need to say anything about who they are and what they're about and what they've done? Because they need that. They feel insufficient. They feel like they're better than the other people there, so they got to prove themselves. Why is that? Because they're not happy with themselves. They don't have a full certainty in who they were. If they did, they wouldn't have to say a word. Look, even I slip up sometimes. I'm a humble alpha. That's what I do. And sometimes I'll go into the realm of the world, and there's people out there, they're talking, excuse my French, but they're getting all this respect because they're just booming and they're like, I'm loud and I'm, And so you just want to stand up and say, man, this guy's so full of it. But why would I do that? The only reason I would do that is to prove something to myself. But why would I prove something to everybody else about myself? Which I'm really proving is that I'm insecure. That's all I'm proving. Right? That's why people always want to make sure that people are looking at them in a positive light. Well, just be who you are, own your presence, own your identity, and be certain of your abilities to deploy your genius in any given situation. And people will look at you how you are seen. People look at you how you see yourself. It's simple as that. If you see yourself as insecure, which most people don't see it consciously, that's how other people are going to see you. If you're dishonest to yourself about why you do the things you do, other people are going to feel that dishonesty.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of it has got to be, some people will get it and some people won't. And you probably shouldn't agonize about that, right?
No, you shouldn't at all, because everyone has their journey. It's too early for some, maybe too late for others. I doubt it, but maybe there is a too late out there. But maybe it's too early for some. People have to go through this process. I'm 57 years old. It took me 54 years to get there.
Yeah,
I'm still not there. It's a constant process, and when we stop learning, we die. So I mean,
But I didn't mean from the perspective of you wanting to be the humble alpha. I meant from the perspective of the people you're trying to influence and impact.
Oh yeah. Okay. No. There's some people that just don't get it. You're right.
Yeah.
They won't embrace it. What I typically see is when we go through a process, it's a 3-month program that they go through with me. It's 1 hour a week on Zoom. And then in between we're connected on WhatsApp, and we do deals, we do, you name it. Like I throw them into the deep end. I'll throw them in front of deals for $1 billion. And here, let's do this. And they're like, and just sort of shocking them into owning their presence, owning who they are. And some people, they get it and they dive right in. And other people, they just don't get it. They have such, say, a personal conviction that they aren't good enough, that it's almost impossible to break through in that moment. But what happens is, over the months and years after, they'll call me and go, "Wow, I know what I totally get it now. I totally get it." And we get back together. Then we get back together, and then we go through it again. So it's pretty cool to see how some people get it. And what I see is the younger people get it quicker because they don't have as much baggage carrying with them that they have to unload. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the older you are, that's the old saying of dogs and new tricks, right? You got to unbreak your bad habits, right? To
Yeah.
do something new. There's no question about that. You've said a lot of things about these different qualities and traits. Can you share any examples of, and maybe additional examples of famous people that we all know? It could be celebrities or politicians or business moguls. Doesn't matter, but some of these people we all know, so we can kind of understand what we're emulating here.
What do you mean, as far as someone that I've worked with, or just someone in general?
No, it doesn't have to be someone that you worked with, just someone
Okay.
in
Okay.
general.
Okay.
I'm dying to say, how does like Elon Musk or Donald Trump come? Like those are the current figures that we're all paying attention to, right? But anybody, it could be Jeff Bezos, or anybody.
Well, it's difficult to see because once you have something, it's easy to be that. Once you have a couple $1 billion under your belt, you don't give a shit about what anybody says.
Yeah, or a couple $100 billion.
A couple $100 billion, yeah. And so, you just go, yeah, whatever, I'm going to do what I want to do. And if you don't like it, tough. That's not owning your presence. That's just saying, I have enough not to care.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big difference.
Okay. They got there somehow, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we're not talking about money right here. I'm talking about building a foundation of your operating system here. Yeah. So, of course they got there. Who knows how they got there? There's a million ways to get there. And sometimes, like, if you talk to any billionaire, I'd say most of them say between 40 and 60% of everything to do is luck, coincidence, and opportunity.
Mm-hmm. There is no question in the world that luck plays a part. I mean, it's just, you just can't deny that there are opportunities in life that are presented to some and not to others. But the tragic thing is Earl Nightingale's old saying, luck is what happens when preparedness meets opportunity. And the opportunities always kind of come into everybody's life, but if you're not prepared, you can't seize them.
Or see them even.
Or see them, yeah. See or seize, yeah.
Yeah, and that's seize them is great. I like that, but that's the biggest problem that people have. They're so busy trying to figure out what they're doing in their life now that they miss all the opportunities. And the biggest mistake that I see is someone says, the old saying, "Put your nose to the grindstone." What do you see when you put your nose to the grindstone? You see the grindstone. You miss the rock out.
You're too close.
Right? You miss everything. You miss everything else. All the other opportunities and chances out there. There's not a deal that I do. There's not a business that I was in that wasn't somehow able to be connected to something else that I was doing. There wasn't one business in my entire life. And I've owned over 20 businesses and cocktail bars and nightclubs and insurance companies and construction companies. And I've actually operated those, most of them in Europe. And there wasn't one that wasn't crossed over with another. There wasn't one. And so if I'm in a business and I'm looking at that business as only that business, then I'm missing out big time. And that's where the expansion comes. And that's where this connection comes into other worlds and these crossovers, like with Bocelli, perfect example. His artists were classic guitarists. Two classic guitarists on stage, boring, right? So it's nice for a couple songs and that's it. Well, I put him together with Fedde Le Grand from he's a house music guy, a couple other really famous house music people, and they did some crossover music, which went crazy. Mm-hmm. Right. So what can you do that you're already doing that someone else is already doing, but just in a different genre or a different space? And how can I expand that? And then through that, you're like, wow, I'm actually better than I thought I was. I'm actually I'm able to do more than I thought I could. It's a never-ending expansion of everything that you do. I could go on forever about this because this is the biggest thing that I tell all my clients. They come to me for help. And I said, we're going to do deals, so get ready. And as soon as I find any deal, which usually takes a couple of weeks, where they can add their value, doesn't matter what it is, even if it's just a connection that they have, I'm bringing them in. Yeah. I want to submerge them in the world of deal making. And deal making, I mean companies that need help growing and scaling, funding, expand, whatever it is. And even if it's buying land or property or whatever, I will always bring these people in. All of my clients turn into deal makers. And that's because we're connecting the dots constantly in the world around us. And it's effortless when your awareness is there and you're certain of who you are and your abilities.
Okay, so back to the question, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you think of any famous people that we all know that embody any of the examples of any of the traits that you were talking about here?
Well, I don't know many personally. I have one politician that most people won't know, who aren't other politicians. The name is Sven von Storch, and he's a German. And this guy is the strategic advisor to everyone from Trump to Bolsonaro to the 15, 20 world leaders. You'll never hear his name in public. Yep. You'll never know who he is, but he's probably one of the most influential conservatives on the planet.
Interesting.
He's a very good friend of mine. That's why I can say that about mine. We've been together since 2003 as friends, and we've done business together, and we've done organizations together. Actually, founded a few organizations together. That's a perfect example. You'll never hear him talk about himself. You'll never hear anything. Or let's say this, the Duchess of Oldenburg, right? So a very good friend of mine. Her family is the Tsar family of Russia. Now that's something to say. Like my family were
Right.
the Romanovs.
Yeah.
Never mention it.
Anastasia. Yeah.
Never talk about it, never mention it, never show it, never use it for leverage, nothing. They operate on who they are and not what they've done or what they have.
Hmm.
And so there's two examples of people that I know personally. If I look out into the world, it's hard to say. If I would look at Elon Musk, for instance, like you said, I don't know him from Jack.
Yeah.
The way I knew him, the way I saw him before, I thought he was quite humble, eccentric, of course, but humble. Like I said, if you have a couple $100 billion, you can do whatever you want anyway. So is that really who they are, or is that just who they've become through the money? It's just,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to tell. That's a good point.
most of the people that have that, you won't know who they are anyway because they won't tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. What haven't I asked you that you want to share with the audience?
This has all been about the surface stuff, about the operating and stuff like that. What it really comes down to is, and it says owning your presence, right? So these books are really hard to put a title to. How do you encompass something that's going to change your life, turn you into the person that you're always supposed to be? How do you put that on the front cover? You can't. So it's something that goes through, I would say, if we were in a longer conversation, a lot deeper with how I got there, why I even chose to go into this journey, and what it means for me to help the others get there as well. I was always been a high flyer. I was in the military for 8 years, went to Iraq, got a Bronze Star, got out, started a cocktail bar. Everything was gold. Everything I did was amazing until 2008 when I crashed and burned. And I had
A lot of people crashed and burned around that time. That was the Great Recession.
Well, I crashed and burned in 2007, and then in 2008, mid 2008, I had a suicide attempt. And I disappeared from society for about 8 months. No one knew where I was except for my mother. And I went to into a monastery in Austria in the mountains with the Benedictine monks. And there I changed my life by finding out the core of who I was. And that wasn't my intention. My intention was to disappear from life.
Uh-huh. So you were going there to escape, not really to work on yourself, right?
Yes, I was there to escape. It was just the world was too loud and too noisy and too dangerous for me at that time. Or maybe I was too dangerous for the world. I don't know. And
so what do you do there? I mean, did you just meditate all day? Were you silent all the time, or what?
Well, the first 2 weeks, I walked in, I'm like, hey, Mr. Monk, here's my problem. This is what happened. This is what I feel like. Da, 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 da. What's the solution? And he's like, just go walk in the forest. I'm like,
yeah, right.
Yeah. And so it took me about 2 weeks to calm down. And the silence in between the meetings, silence in between lunch and dinner and breakfast, lunch and dinner, listen, you had nothing to do. There was no TV, internet, no cell phones, nothing to do.
Right.
So what do you do when there's nothing to do? You start thinking, right? Well, after a while, that calms down and it slows down, and then it starts reversing, and you start weeding out all the BS that you have in your mind, the programming that you have. Then it sort of solidifies even deeper, and then you start feeling the connection, the heart-mind connection. And it's a beautiful thing when you can, in seconds, connect your mind and your heart and feel what you're thinking and think what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I would just literally, I would sit down in the forest sometimes, close my eyes and open them. It was 8 hours like that.
Wow.
It was incredible.
That was not sleeping.
No.
Right. Yeah.
I can tell you stories that no one believes. What happens when I open my eyes sometimes in the middle of the forest, and what kind of animals were around me without fear. I literally became one with nature. Nothing surprised me. Nothing shocked me. Nothing, if a deer walked up to me, it wouldn't surprise me, because obviously it would walk up to me because I'm one of them, And so it got to that point where I was just so zen that I wasn't even fit for society anymore. I was just, and I spent most of the time just thinking, and then I started to write. That's the first time I read Joe Dispenza's book, Rewire Your Mind, or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Joe's been on the show before. I love his work. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, Joe's amazing. That's the first book I read. It was a 550-page book. Oh, there was a guest house in Austria. They're called. It's like a family-owned restaurant and pension, little hotel.
Yep, pension. Yep.
Yeah, pension. And I would sit in the cafe there, and I'd drink espresso and I'd read. Well, they started calling me professor because I never talked to anybody. I just sat in the corner and read. And it was a family-owned mother, father, kids. And they had weddings every weekend at the backside of the monastery. And so I found a job there just to pass time. They had 300 guests and, of course, 300 sets of silverware that was in a big vat like this filled with water, and they needed to be pulled out and polished. So I said, let me do that for them. And I said, do you mind if I help you? And they're like, no. So I just sat there on Saturdays and I polished about 300 sets of silverware. And it was almost like meditation. They just, all the knives, all the forks.
There's that old book from decades ago called Chop Wood, Carry Water, which is about that, finding the sort of the Zen moment and doing these menial tasks, right?
Yeah, it was beautiful because I got to know the family quite well. And I realized what kind of a different person I'd become, because before I would talk about myself and what I did and where I went, and no one knew anything about me and no one asked. They'd say, oh, you're American. What are you doing here? Oh, I'm just, relaxing in the monastery. And that was it.
Right.
And in the past, I would be like, well, I did this and I did that. I'm military. No one knew all this kind of stuff. It was a beautiful thing because they knew that I knew who I was, and that was enough for them. They didn't need to ask. When they asked me what was up and who I was, I just said, I'm an American. I'm here relaxing for a while. That was enough for them. The presence that I had, the ownership of who I was, the way I was showing up for them in their life when they didn't even know who I was enough for them to say, we can trust this guy. We like this guy. And they were giving me food and making me dinner and all. I was like, no, it's fine. Thank you. And it was amazing. I actually gained weight.
Interesting. Interesting stuff. Well, Stephen, the book is available in all the usual places, of course. I'm looking at it on that main site we all have heard of. It's got great reviews. Do you have a website you'd like to give out as well?
I have my business website, but I have on my personal website the 7 Factors of Success. It's a 30-minute free class that anybody can take. It's just a presentation from me, and it goes through a lot of the stuff we went through in more detail. And that's Stephen-Kuhn.com, Kuhn, Stephen-Kuhn.com. Go ahead, shoot me your email and click go, and you'll be led to the 30. It's a really useful 30 minutes.
Excellent, good stuff. Stephen Kuhn, thank you so much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.